This was the agenda. You guys heard it all, and I'll just move right into Guard. Awesome. Okay, so what is Guard? So Guard is a combination of command line application and a serverless AWS application. It basically scans users' AWS resources to assess their compliance with data protection policy, DPP, and the acceptable use policy, and returns a finding summary. And if you went through filling out developer profile on Seller Central, you might be aware of DPP and AUP. If not, I would highly recommend reading through these two policies. So what can Guard do? By utilizing different AWS services, you can consolidate findings from all other services for report, monitor AWS resources for malicious activity, and monitor EC2 instances for unintended network vulnerabilities, look for PII in unencrypted S3 buckets, which is very serious, and verifies quarterly baselining of user access. And on the right column, it links out to audit controls that these scan rules correspond to. So you might be thinking, sure, these sounds all cool, but what's in it for me? Well, Guard is secure, transparency on assessed areas and findings, and source data is not included in the report shared with Amazon. Diagnosis is stored in encrypted designated S3 bucket. It's efficient, it reduces manual effort for audit, standardized scan rules, and report is generated within 24 hours. It's also self-service because it identifies incremental small gaps before it becomes costly, and its flexible assessment cadence for self-evaluation. Now I'll hand it off to Montana, my colleague, who will be taking you through Guard architecture diagram and a demonstration of what the experience is when getting started with Guard. And I'm going to ask Montana to hop on to camera.
Hey, thanks, Olivia. Hi, everybody. I'm Montana. I'm a software engineer from the team who created Guard, and I'm going to now go over the architecture. Guard installation takes place via an AWS CloudFormation template deployment, which deploys the following workflows and services. Amazon S3, used to install Guard artifacts and store reports. Amazon SNS to send Guard communications via email to users and to report findings to Amazon if users opt in. AWS Lambda to support workflows, including the Jobs Lambda, Report Lambda, Disable Lambda, Cleanup Lambda, Report to Amazon Lambda, and the CLI Setup Lambda. Amazon Event Bridge to support Guard's workflows and handle dependencies between functional logic. IAM roles, creating permissions for Guard to scan AWS infrastructure. And finally, a VPC, subnets, security groups, and an Amazon Linux 2 EC2 instance used to spin up a browser-based EC2 session, which can be used to run the Guard CLI. The CLI itself has 4 commands. First, enable services. This command starts AWS security services, including Macie, Guard Duty, Inspector, Access Analyzer, Security Hub, and AWS Config. Services started with this command are automatically stopped after 24 hours. The next command is Start Scan. This command initiates the Guard scanning based on your configurations and enable services. You can opt in or out of sharing your report with Amazon during this command. 24 hours after running Start Scan, you will get an email with your report summary, and your CSV report will be uploaded to S3. Next is Cleanup Guard interface. This command cleans up resources, including the VPC, security group, and EC2 instance. And finally, there's an optional command, Report to Amazon, which reports findings to Amazon in case you opted out during Start Scan, but later change your mind. And now let's talk about actually getting started with Guard. So I'll talk over the full Guard experience. The Guard experience consists of 3 key phases: installation, which includes both the CloudFormation deployment and the EC2 provisioning, report generation, and cleanup. This is the brief outline of the steps, and next you'll see demo videos covering each of these. And we will first start with installation, looking at the CloudFormation deployment and EC2 provisioning. So here we have our demo for Guard installation. Starting from Seller Central, you'll navigate to the top left menu, and from Partner Network, select Develop Apps in order to navigate to the Developer Console. From the Developer Console, you'll find the ingress to the Guard installation page right above your listed apps. Click on Get Started, and you will be taken to the Selling Partner Compliance page. From this page, select the installation button for your AWS account type, either Global or CN. This will bring you to the CloudFormation template preview screen. Enter a valid developer email, which you can receive notifications to during the installation and reporting process. You'll also be prompted for merchant token. On screen, you can also see how to fetch merchant token by navigating to Seller Central, opening the Settings drop-down menu, and navigating to Account Info. From Account Info, under Business Information, you can open the merchant token link, copy your merchant token, and paste that into the merchant token box. Check the box for CloudFormation to create IAM resources, click Create Stack, and then kick back and wait for a guard to deploy. That'll take some time that this demo will skip over, but eventually you'll receive a first email requesting you to subscribe to the guard SNS topic. Once you subscribe to that, a few more minutes will pass and the EC2 CLI installation will complete, and you'll receive the second email seen here in order to launch the EC2 instance in your browser. This marks the point where Guard is finished installing, so closes out the installation portion of the demo, and now the CLI is spun up and ready to move on to the reporting section. All right, so now I'll go over reporting, including how to use the Guard CLI, and we'll also see a sample report. So we're going to start from the same place the last demo left off, receiving the email with the link to EC2 Session Manager. Open that link in order to access the Guard EC2 instance for running commands. The Guard documentation page, which is findable from the same installation page shown in the last demo, includes all of the commands that you will need in order to run Guard. So you'll see me opening that page pretty shortly here in this demo. And from here, we can see the instructions for launching the stack, which we've also already done. And now we can copy our commands to first CD into the correct Guard CLI directory. And then we will copy the command for running enable services. The video looks paused for me, so I hope it's going. Yeah, so here you can see me CDing into the correct directory, copying for enable services, and running enable services. Enable services will allow you to configure which AWS security services to cover in the report. Depending on regional availability for each resource, it will ask whether you would like to enable all or some of Macie, Guard Duty, Access Analyzer, and/or Inspector. On screen, you can see me opting in to all four. After opting in, it will go ahead and enable that service if it's not already enabled in your account. If you select to opt out of any of them, then it won't enable that service. Finally, it'll enable Security Hub, and that closes out the Enable Services command. Now, finally, we can run Start Scan in order to kick off the actual report generation. This command can also be found from the Guard documentation. So go ahead and copy that, navigate back to Session Manager, and run Start Scan. This command will ask one question on whether or not you would like to share your report with Amazon. You can opt either in or out. And finally, it will start the Guard scan. Guard will run self-sufficiently for 24 hours after this, after which it will upload the full Guard CSV report to the Guard S3 bucket and will send an email notification, including a report summary, to the developer email provided during installation. After this demo, I'll show a sample report. If you opted into sharing the report with Amazon, it's also after the same 24-hour period that the report contents will additionally be sent to Amazon. If you opted out of sharing the report, like mentioned earlier, you can still change your mind later on and run report to Amazon in order to share your report, maybe after you've already viewed it. Only after this 24-hour time period, once you've received back your report, is it safe to perform the last step for Guard cleanup, which I'll show in the final demo after showing the sample report in our next slide. So here you can see a sample report. From here you can see details about the risk, each offending ARN, so it's easy to locate the exact resource, risk severity, and most importantly, resources on risk remediation. And next we can take a look at the Guard cleanup. Guard will automatically clean up 30 days after installation, but if you would like to clean up Guard right after getting your report, that can also be done manually using instructions, again from the Guard documentation page. First, you'll reopen the EC2 Session Manager, and now you're going to run the command for Cleanup Guard interface. Once this completes, wait 15 minutes, which this demo will skip over, and then you can move ahead with deleting the Selling Partner API Guard stack, which you can see here, navigating to the AWS CloudFormation console, selecting the Selling Partner API Guard stack, and selecting to delete that stack. This will take a couple more minutes, And once the stack is finished deleting, then the final services can be disabled as desired. We'll first go over how to suspend guard duty. In order to suspend guard duty, you can navigate to the guard duty console, and then navigate to the settings page, scroll down, and select to suspend guard duty, and confirm. Up next is how to disable Macie. So again, for Macie, you're going to navigate to the AWS console, this time for Macie. You'll have to ensure that you are in the correct region. So this will be the same region that you deployed your initial CloudFormation stack to. So you'll see me update my region. And once I've done so, you can navigate into settings, scroll down, and then select to disable or suspend Macie and confirm. Next is the disablement for Security Hub. So again, for Security Hub, you're going to navigate to the Security Hub console. Next, you will open the settings page and navigate to the General tab, scroll down, and disable Security Hub. The last resource to manually disable, if you choose to do so, is AWS config, suspending the config recorder. So again, you're going to navigate to the AWS config console. And then go to settings, click edit in the top right, and then you can select the box to disable the recording and confirm. And this concludes the manual cleanup for Guard. Like I mentioned earlier, you may also utilize Guard Auto Cleanup, which will take place 30 days after running a Guard scan and will disable the security services enabled by Guard, as well as removing the EC2 and associated VPCs, which will eliminate any ongoing costs. That's the end for this demo, and now I will give it back to Olivia for our developer success story.
Thanks, Montana. I'm gonna go on camera again. Does anyone have any other questions? Please feel free to post your question in the chat. We have our Guard team with us today, so they would love to hear from you guys. What your thoughts on these?
We do have a few questions, and I'm just not sure if the whole audience can see the answers. So if we just want to quickly go through those. I know Sandeep is on the line as well. So there are two here that I think would be interesting to talk through. If we could just take a pause, does that work?
Trying to look at. Oh, okay. I am trying to look for.
And I can actually read them out and have Sandeep go through the answers as well.
Sure, we can definitely do that.
Perfect. The first was around limitations, like regional limitations for installation. So are there any limitations around regions to install Guard? So Sandeep, I believe you may have answered this, but just wanted to make sure the whole group heard the response here. If you don't mind jumping on and responding, Sandeep.
I can take that. So in terms of regional deployment, so this is Anirudh here, and in terms of regional deployments, the ones that we have are dependent on the AWS security services that we are going to be enabling per region. So it's on the availability of those services in those specific regions. So I'm about to share the documentation around this in the chat. And there are going to be limitations such as, for example, Amazon Inspector isn't available in the Cape Town region. So you wouldn't have scans enabled through those. But for places like US East, US West, DUB regions, these services are available, and you should be able to have those scans enabled by default. And I'm just going to share that documentation so that we can go through that. You can go through that in more detail.
Perfect. And there was one other before we jump into the developer success story, Olivia. So, Anirudh, what happens to findings if I select to not enable one or more of services? How does the overall report change with regard to findings from each service enabled?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Montana is going to be running through the report in more detail once, and as she goes through that, there is a column within the report where it'll say not enabled because you didn't enable it through the CLI. So you wouldn't receive those respective findings in your security hub as well as in the final report generated by Guard. So that's going to be the experience in terms of the findings and in terms of how the report is generated.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, please continue to submit questions through the question box, and we will triage those as we go. But there will also be an opportunity to do a live discussion on questions at the end of the session today as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, team. It was a nice break for me as well too. Can we see still the screen as well? Am I still sharing?
Yes, you're good.
Thank you. All right. Yes, like Martin said, please post any questions that you guys have throughout, and then we'll do another round of Q&A after. And I'm now here for a developer success story. So thank you so much, Montana, for the demo. Now I have a developer success story. Lingxing, also previously known as Asen King. So Lingxing is a cross-border e-commerce SaaS service provider of ERP functional software, products, and solutions. Over the last few months, we've been working closely with Haiwen Kun, a senior data engineer at Lingxing from Shenzhen, to implement Guard. His main responsibility is to integrate data from Selling Partner API to fulfill the needs of cross-border e-commerce business for real-time, accurate, and usable Selling Partner data. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us session live today due to time zone difference. I think it's about 3 a.m. his time now. So every developer is slightly different with Guard, but he's happy to share with us his story of implementing SPAPI Guard. Let's take a look. Right now, I'm going to take you through a brief overview of Lingxing's background. Lingxing ERP is a well-known product within the cross-border e-commerce industry. It also aims to simplify cross-border selling by providing one-stop management system for all kinds of e-commerce sellers. Through 5 years of development, Lingxing ERP has gained a lot of experience in data governance. As a third-party service provider, they strictly adhere to Amazon's data protection policy, DPP again. From the multiple terms of the policy, Lingxing believes the most important term is the one regarding personally identifiable information, also known as PII. Some examples of PII data include buyer addresses and emails. In the following slides, I'll take you through how Lingxing manages the PII data that it processes. Lingxing gains access to PII data mainly through the Tokens API. I'm sure you guys have heard of those. Using the Tokens API, they're able to retrieve a restricted data token, RDT, which allows them to access restricted resources. So similar to RDT is the access token obtained through the refresh token, which allows the access token to seller data, but not categorized under PII. The token API is the SPAPI's method of securing personal information of buyers, since the service providers without proper authorization do not have access to the token API. For example, if a service provider calls the orders API using the access token, but not the restricted data token, then the data returned will not include PII data. This mechanism allows fine control over data access throughout different applications to prevent misuse of PII information. Lingxing controls access to PII data through its internal SPAPI gateway. Their gateway logs all the requests to satisfy auditing requirements. The logs are saved for at least 90 days. The PII data is then secured using AES 256 encryption and is stored in a different medium, totally isolated from non-PII data. The PII data expires after 28 days, and then is automatically removed from the storage. Also, apart from this, their encryption keys are managed through KMS, Key Management Service, to guarantee security of their access keys. If their request logs exhibit any sort of unusual behavior, such as abnormal amount of request or data count, then alarm system will automatically contact their security department. Then they will open up an investigation right away. Now the fun part. I'll now take you through how Lingxing has historically gone through Amazon's auditing process. So usually Amazon delegates a third party to conduct the auditing process for its service providers. In Lingxing's most recent audit, Deloitte China was selected by Amazon to conduct the auditing process on Lingxing ERP. Previously, Lingxing auditing process was split into 3 sections. 1 preliminary review, 2 field work and reporting, and lastly the follow-up review. Before GUARD, the auditing process generally took Lingxing around 3 months and required 5 people on their team to complete. Because of the amount of time and human resource they needed, Lingxing was only able to perform data security audits annually. Lingxing was able, with the introduction of SPAPI GUARD, the auditing process can now be streamlined and be conducted swiftly and efficiently. Let's see how. At the beginning of this year, Lingxing participated in an internal testing of GUARD. To conduct the AWS scanning process, Lingxing utilized 1 AWS DevOps engineer. His duties included preparing GUARD resources, executing GUARD scripts, and maintaining GUARD resource lifecycles. The entire process of generating an audit report only took around 1 day compared to a lot of days. In addition to the resource benefits, Lingxing no longer has to manually prepare their auditing data and evidences, as it's automatically generated by GUARD. They can focus on improvements and new features. So for example, now with GUARD, during their deployment process, they can deploy their data services before the actual rollout of new features. GUARD allows them to verify production data without it being accessible to their front end. Under their mechanism, they can assess their data and verify that it satisfies the requirement before enabling access to their customers. And instead of manually reviewing if the new features require PII data, GUARD actually helps them evaluate the compliance during their pre-deployment stage when only data services are deployed. So looking back in GUARD, How and Lingxing have been inspired in many ways. They also have quoted, first, the data-driven implementation of security are more significant than procedural implementation. Second, the automation is always more efficient than manual labor. Cloud computing and DevOps are very powerful tools that bring so much value. With GUARD, data auditing can become normalized and integrated. This will not only protect our users' data, but also increase the efficiency of service providers in developing products, raising the industry to a higher standard in terms of balance between safety and efficiency. And lastly, we have an example of their recent audit report and screenshots that you can refer to. And I would like to take this moment to thank Lingxing for sharing their developer story with us. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them. But that was all in terms of developer stories. We do have multiple resources available to you publicly, which can help you with the integration of GUARD. Let's take a look. As always, we have our documentation to help you through. If you have any questions, please reach out. There are support links available.